Chicago just dropped new numbers on homelessness. Way more people out there than they thought.
Yeah, Brett Bagansky is live in Uptown with the latest data as the weather continues to be dangerously cold. Brett?
Chicago spends billions every year on housing programs. Politicians give speeches, budgets get approved, promises get made. But outside, people are still living in parking lots, still sleeping in vehicles, still choosing between heat and food. This is what system failure looks like in real life. And in 2026, it's getting worse. Between 2022 and 2026, Chicago experienced a dramatic increase in people living full-time in vehicles, vans, and aging RVs. Housing advocates estimate that vehicle homelessness in Cook County has surged by over 60% in just 4 years. What started as temporary shelter during layoffs and rent spikes has transformed into permanent survival for thousands of families. Many of these RVs are not modern motorhomes. They are decades-old campers, delivery vans converted with plywood beds, or minivans packed with belongings and makeshift sleeping areas. Recent housing surveys reveal that more than 40% of vehicle dwellers in Chicago were previously renters who lost housing after rent increases of 25 to 45% since 2021. Median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in many neighborhoods now exceeds $1,600 per month, while average wages in service and warehouse jobs remain under $22 per hour. This widening gap makes saving for security deposits nearly impossible. Public transit access once allowed low-income residents to live farther from the city center, but rising transportation costs and job instability have pushed people to park close to their workplaces instead. Industrial corridors, highway underpasses, and unused lots have quietly become survival zones where entire communities form. What makes this crisis different in 2026 is its permanence. Surveys show that over half of Chicago's vehicle residents have lived this way for more than 18 months. What was meant to be temporary shelter has become a lifestyle of last resort, with no clear path back to traditional housing for most families. Most RV homelessness in Chicago does not begin on the streets. It begins inside apartments. Between 2023 and 2025, Cook County recorded more than 180,000 eviction filings. Even when tenants avoid formal eviction, many leave under pressure from rent hikes, lease non-renewals, or building sales that force everyone out. Medical debt plays a major role in this displacement. Nearly 1 in 4 vehicle dwellers report losing housing after a health emergency. A single hospital stay can generate bills exceeding $15,000. Without savings, families fall behind on rent within months. Credit scores drop sharply. Future rental applications become impossible to pass. Layoffs have accelerated this process dramatically. Between 2024 and 2026, Illinois lost tens of thousands of logistics, retail, and manufacturing jobs. Many displaced workers moved into gig economy work with highly unstable income. Weekly earnings fluctuate wildly. Most landlords refuse to accept this kind of uncertainty when screening tenants. Security deposits have also surged to unprecedented levels. In many Chicago buildings, move-in costs now exceed $4,000. For people earning $40,000 per year, this represents more than 2 months of take-home pay after taxes. Once housing is lost, RVs become the final buffer between families and complete street homelessness. Vehicles allow people to stay near schools, hospitals, and jobs. But this buffer quickly turns into entrapment. Without stable addresses, it becomes harder to qualify for housing assistance, employment opportunities, and government benefits, effectively locking families into long-term displacement with no way out. Chicago winters are among the deadliest in America for unhoused people. Average January temperatures often fall below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind chills reaching negative 20 degrees or lower. For RV residents, this turns every night into a survival test that could prove fatal. Most vehicles are not insulated for brutal Midwest winters. Thin walls, cracked seals, and metal frames allow heat to escape rapidly. To stay warm, residents rely on propane heaters, electric space heaters, and makeshift stoves. These methods are extremely dangerous. Fire departments report dozens of RV-related winter fires each year, many caused by faulty wiring or tipped heaters that ignite bedding or clothing. Carbon monoxide poisoning is another major risk. Improper ventilation can turn a small heater into a deadly hazard within minutes. Local clinics report significant spikes in winter carbon monoxide exposure among vehicle dwellers, with some cases proving fatal before help arrives. Frozen plumbing is a constant problem. Water tanks crack under pressure, pipes burst overnight, toilets stop working entirely. Without expensive repairs, RVs become completely unlivable. Many residents resort to melting snow or buying bottled water, costing $40 to $70 per week. Fuel costs compound the crisis severely. Running engines overnight for warmth can cost over $300 per month in winter. With gas prices remaining volatile, many simply cannot afford consistent heat throughout the season. Medical data shows that hypothermia-related emergency visits among homeless individuals in Chicago rise by over 30% each winter. Every cold wave becomes a potential mass casualty event that strains hospital systems. Chicago's shelter system was never designed to support long-term mass homelessness on this scale. By 2026, it is operating far beyond capacity. City data shows that on most winter nights, emergency shelters run at over 95% occupancy, with hundreds turned away daily. Many shelters impose strict rules that exclude vulnerable populations. These include curfews, identification requirements, sobriety policies, and separation of couples. RV residents often avoid shelters because they cannot bring pets, partners, or personal belongings. For families with children, shelters may be located far from schools and jobs, creating impossible trade-offs between education and safety. Safety concerns are another major barrier. Reports of theft, assaults, and severe overcrowding are common. For people living in vehicles, shelters can feel more dangerous than parking quietly in familiar areas where they have established some routine. Wait lists for transitional housing now stretch 12 to 24 months in most cases. Housing vouchers face similar delays, with approval processes taking years. Even when finally approved, recipients struggle to find landlords willing to accept assistance vouchers in high-rent neighborhoods. Migrant shelter programs have further strained already limited resources. Since 2023, thousands of asylum seekers have entered Chicago's shelter network, competing for limited beds and funding. While both groups desperately need help, the system lacks adequate capacity for either population. As a result, many RV residents are effectively excluded from emergency services. Shelters technically exist, but they are not accessible in practice for most vehicle dwellers. The system functions primarily as overflow management, not as real housing solutions that create pathways to stability. In response to growing RV communities, Chicago has dramatically expanded parking enforcement and zoning restrictions. Dozens of neighborhoods now explicitly prohibit overnight vehicle dwelling. Violations can result in fines exceeding $250 per ticket with no payment plans available. For RV residents living on razor-thin budgets, tickets accumulate rapidly. Many report receiving 3 to 5 citations per month. Unpaid fines lead to vehicle booting, impoundment, and permanent loss of their only shelter from the elements. Towing is especially devastating for families. Impound fees can exceed $1,500 initially. Storage fees add $60 per day, while vehicles sit in lots. Most residents cannot possibly recover their vehicles under these terms. Once towed, homelessness becomes absolute and irreversible. City cleanup operations also displace entire RV clusters without warning. Without sufficient notice, residents are ordered to leave immediately, losing access to nearby clinics, outreach workers, and established employment routes they depend on. Officials justify enforcement actions under public safety and sanitation concerns. However, comprehensive studies show that forced displacement actually increases instability and worsens long-term health outcomes. People simply move to more hidden, unsafe locations where services cannot reach them. By 2026, advocacy groups estimate that over 30% of Chicago's vehicle homeless population has lost at least one vehicle to enforcement actions. Instead of reducing homelessness through these tactics, crackdowns actively deepen the crisis by removing the last barrier between poverty and complete street homelessness. Families lose everything they own overnight when vehicles are impounded and eventually sold at auction. For many RV residents in Chicago, daily life includes frequent contact with law enforcement. Parking complaints, welfare checks, noise reports, and anonymous tips regularly bring police to their doors. While some officers offer genuine assistance, many encounters result in citations, vehicle searches, or orders to immediately relocate. City records show that vehicle-related enforcement calls increased by more than 45% between 2022 and 2026. Most of these calls involve people simply living in their vehicles. Residents report being forced to move multiple times per week, severely disrupting sleep schedules, work routines, and medical appointments. Each interaction carries significant risk. minor violations can escalate into arrests for unpaid fines or expired registrations that people cannot afford to renew. Once arrested, individuals may lose access to their vehicle entirely. Legal aid groups report that over 20% of vehicle dwellers currently have unresolved court cases linked to parking or traffic enforcement. Racial disparities also persist throughout the enforcement system. Available data indicates that Black and Latino residents are stopped and cited at significantly higher rates than white residents in similar situations. This pattern reinforces destructive cycles of debt and criminalization. Constant surveillance creates severe psychological strain. Many residents sleep lightly or not at all, fearing knocks at their windows during the night. Some avoid leaving their vehicles during daytime hours to reduce visibility and avoid attention. This isolation dramatically reduces access to outreach programs and essential health services. Instead of stabilizing housing situations, enforcement-driven policing often increases displacement, trauma, and deep distrust of institutions, making long-term recovery significantly harder for vulnerable families. Living in an RV without stable utilities creates severe and often life-threatening health risks. Many residents suffer from untreated chronic conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, asthma, and arthritis. Without reliable refrigeration, essential medications spoil within days. Without consistent electricity, critical medical devices like oxygen concentrators and sleep apnea machines cannot function properly. Mobile clinic data shows that over 60% of Chicago's vehicle homeless population lacks regular access to primary care physicians. Emergency rooms become the default healthcare provider for routine issues. This leads to delayed treatment for serious conditions and significantly higher mortality rates compared to housed populations. Winter months dramatically increase danger. Frostbite, pneumonia, and respiratory infections spike among vehicle residents exposed to extreme cold. Hospitals report seasonal increases of 25 to 35% in cold-related admissions among unhoused patients during Chicago's harsh winters. Mental health care is even harder to access than physical health services. Long waitlists and extremely limited mobile psychiatry services leave most people completely untreated. Substance use disorders often worsen in isolation without proper support systems. Infections spread easily in crowded, unsanitary conditions. Limited access to clean water and proper sanitation leads to skin infections, gastrointestinal illness, and severe dental disease. Untreated dental problems alone account for thousands of emergency room visits annually throughout Cook County. Medical debt compounds the existing crisis. Even insured residents face co-payments and uncovered services. A single emergency room visit can cost $2,000 or more. For people earning a regular income from gig work, this creates devastating long-term financial damage that prevents any chance of returning to stable housing. Contrary to widespread stereotypes, most RV residents in Chicago are actively employed. Recent surveys indicate that nearly 55% of vehicle dwellers hold jobs or perform regular gig work. These positions include warehouse workers, office cleaners, delivery drivers, security guards, home health aides, and caregivers for elderly clients. However, income remains highly unstable. Many earn between $1,800 and $2,600 per month, far below what is needed for market-rate housing in Chicago. With average rents exceeding $1,600, housing costs would consume over 70% of monthly income before any other expenses. Lack of permanent addresses creates multiple employment barriers. Job applications, background checks, and payroll systems often require stable housing addresses. Some workers use friends' addresses or post office boxes, risking immediate termination if the deception is discovered during verification. Maintaining basic hygiene also affects employment prospects. Without regular access to showers and laundry facilities, workers struggle to maintain professional appearance standards. Gym memberships and truck stop showers can cost $40 to $80 monthly, draining already limited funds needed for food and fuel. Transportation failures are devastatingly common. When vehicles break down, residents may miss work for weeks while unable to afford repairs. Average repair costs ranging from $1,200 to $3,000 are simply unaffordable for most families. Many people juggle multiple part-time jobs simultaneously to survive. This leads to extreme exhaustion and eventual burnout. Studies show that working homeless individuals experience significantly higher rates of workplace injury and clinical depression than both housed workers and unemployed homeless populations combined. A rapidly growing portion of Chicago's vehicle homeless population consists of older adults and families with children. By 2026, nearly 30% are over age 55. Many survive on fixed incomes under $1,400 per month from Social Security or disability payments. These payments no longer cover basic rent anywhere in Chicago. Even subsidized senior housing facilities have multi-year waitlists. After medical emergencies or spousal death, many elderly residents lose housing within months of the triggering event. Families face particularly unique and difficult challenges. Children living in vehicles struggle severely with school attendance, completing homework, and maintaining adequate nutrition. School districts report rising numbers of mobile students lacking stable residences who fall behind academically. Lack of privacy profoundly affects child development. Teenagers often drop out due to embarrassment about their living situations and chronic instability. Child welfare agencies sometimes intervene when conditions are discovered, creating serious risks of family separation. Healthcare needs are significantly higher for senior citizens. Mobility issues, heart disease, and medication dependency make vehicle living especially dangerous and potentially fatal. Yet nursing facilities remain financially unaffordable without Medicaid approval, which can take years. Many seniors previously owned homes outright. Foreclosure, property taxes, or overwhelming medical debt forced sales. Losing stable housing late in life is psychologically devastating and often impossible to recover from. This demographic shift proves conclusively that homelessness is no longer limited to young, single adults with substance abuse issues. It now affects entire life stages, from young children through retirement-age seniors, fundamentally changing the nature of America's housing crisis. Chicago's social service system is severely fragmented and completely overwhelmed. Housing assistance, food aid, healthcare, and employment services operate through separate agencies, with virtually no coordination. Applicants must navigate multiple bureaucracies simultaneously. Completing applications requires complex paperwork, attending multiple appointments, and maintaining consistent contact, all extremely difficult without phones, internet access, or reliable transportation. Nearly 40% of eligible vehicle dwellers fail to complete application processes despite genuine need. Housing vouchers remain extremely scarce. In 2025, fewer than 1 in 5 applicants received any assistance. Waiting lists often close entirely for years at a time, with no new applications accepted regardless of need. Caseworkers are severely overburdened across all agencies. Average caseloads exceed 75 clients per individual worker. This drastically limits meaningful follow-up and personalized support that could make real differences. Nonprofit organizations fill critical gaps but rely on unstable grant funding. Budgets fluctuate dramatically year to year, disrupting established programs. Outreach teams are constantly forced to prioritize immediate emergencies over effective prevention strategies. Many RV residents fall into frustrating service gaps. They earn slightly too much for emergency aid eligibility, but far too little for actual housing. This leaves them completely unsupported by any program. The result is a bureaucratic maze with no clear exits. People move endlessly between offices, shelters, and clinics without making any real progress toward stability. Instead of creating functional pathways out of homelessness, the system primarily manages decline. Program complexity actively discourages participation. Documentation requirements, appointment scheduling, and verification processes assume resources that homeless people simply do not have. The system designed to help actually creates additional barriers to accessing desperately needed assistance. Living in an RV without proper hookups creates constant and severe sanitation problems. Most vehicle residents in Chicago lack reliable access to running water, sewage disposal systems, and regular trash collection. Public restrooms are extremely limited, especially overnight. Many close by 8 p.m., leaving residents without facilities for 12 hours or more. Gym memberships, gas station restrooms, and truck stops become absolutely essential for basic hygiene. These services cost between $30 and $80 per month. When money inevitably runs out, hygiene rapidly collapses. Laundry becomes infrequent. Showers are skipped for days. Illness spreads more easily in these conditions. Public health departments report significantly higher rates of skin infections, lice, scabies, and gastrointestinal disease among vehicle dwellers compared to housed populations. Improper waste disposal also creates serious environmental hazards. Buckets, portable toilets, and improvised systems often leak or overflow onto the ground. Trash accumulation becomes highly visible to surrounding communities. Without regular pickup services, bags pile up around vehicles. This attracts rodents and insects. Complaints from nearby residents and businesses increase dramatically. Enforcement actions follow quickly. Entire communities are forcibly removed due to sanitation concerns. Clean water access is another critical issue. Many residents buy bottled water exclusively, spending $25 to $50 per week. Without access to clean water, safe food preparation becomes impossible. These degrading conditions severely damage dignity and mental health. Constant uncleanliness negatively affects employability and social interaction. Sanitation failures are not personal choices or moral failings. They are the direct and predictable result of systematic infrastructure exclusion from basic utilities. Chronic homelessness produces severe and lasting psychological damage. RV residents live under constant multiple threats, including eviction, towing, extreme cold, theft, and untreated illness. This prolonged stress leads to extremely high rates of depression, anxiety disorders, and post-traumatic stress conditions. Mental health clinics estimate that over 50% of Chicago's vehicle homeless population shows clear symptoms of major depressive disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is particularly common, especially among those previously evicted, abused, or displaced by aggressive enforcement actions. Sleep deprivation is a major contributing factor to mental decline. Noise, extreme cold, police visits, and constant safety fears prevent deep, restorative rest. Long-term sleep loss dramatically increases risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and severe emotional instability. Social isolation worsens all symptoms significantly. Many residents deliberately avoid social contact to remain unnoticed by authorities. This reduces access to emotional support networks. Suicidal ideation is reported at significantly higher rates than in housed populations. Access to mental health care remains extremely limited. Public mental health systems have wait lists stretching months or even years. Private therapy is completely unaffordable for people in poverty. Medication access is inconsistent without stable addresses for prescription delivery. Substance use often becomes a coping behavior for unbearable conditions. Alcohol and drugs provide temporary relief from psychological pain, but deepen long-term dependency. Treatment programs are scarce and extremely difficult to access without stable housing as a prerequisite. Mental health collapse is not a primary cause of homelessness for most people. It is the direct consequence of prolonged instability, trauma, and systematic exclusion from basic human needs and dignity. Improvised living conditions create extreme and often deadly safety hazards. Most RVs currently used for homelessness were never designed for permanent winter occupancy. Electrical systems become dangerously overloaded. Propane tanks are poorly maintained or improperly stored. Wiring is frequently damaged by weather, rodents, or amateur repairs. Chicago Fire Department reports document dozens of vehicle-related fires annually, with concentrations during winter months. Common causes include space heaters left running overnight, candle use for lighting, faulty portable generators, and makeshift cooking stoves. Propane leaks are especially dangerous in enclosed spaces. Without proper ventilation systems, even small leaks can lead to catastrophic explosions. Carbon monoxide deaths remain a persistent and preventable risk. Even small leaks can prove fatal overnight while residents sleep. Fuel storage inside vehicles dramatically increases fire danger. Gasoline containers are often kept dangerously close to heaters or cooking equipment. One spark can destroy entire clusters of parked RVs within minutes. Theft and violence are additional constant threats. Isolated parking areas typically lack adequate lighting and any security presence. Break-ins are extremely common. Residents report losing identification documents, medications, and limited cash reserves. Severe weather adds multiple risks. Heavy snow accumulation can collapse aging roofs. Ice damages exhaust systems and creates carbon monoxide backup. Flooding damages electrical components and creates electrocution hazards. Emergency response is significantly slower in hidden locations where RV communities form. Fires spread quickly through clustered vehicles before help can arrive. Loss of one RV often means loss of absolutely everything a family owns. Safety failures are fundamentally structural problems. They stem directly from forcing people to survive in spaces never meant for long-term human habitation. RV homelessness in Chicago remains largely hidden from mainstream view. Many communities form in industrial zones, under highway overpasses, near rail yards, and along isolated riverbanks. These locations remain completely unseen by most city eye residents going about daily life. Individual clusters may contain 10 to 50 vehicles parked together. Over time, informal systems and social structures naturally develop. Residents share tools, food, and critical information about enforcement patterns. Some communities establish security rotations to watch for threats. Others coordinate trash removal to avoid attracting attention. These informal communities provide essential stability. People feel considerably safer in groups than living alone. Strong social bonds reduce isolation and help prevent violence. However, invisibility carries significant costs. Outreach workers struggle to locate residents who need services. Mobile healthcare teams miss patients entirely. Official data consistently undercounts vehicle homelessness by thousands of people. City surveys regularly underestimate actual populations by up to 40% or more. Without accurate numbers, funding allocations remain grossly inadequate for actual need. When communities are discovered by authorities, they are typically dismantled immediately. Evictions scatter residents across the city. Social networks collapse overnight. Support systems vanish completely. Invisibility protects people temporarily from enforcement, but prevents any long-term policy solutions. Out of sight consistently becomes out-of-policy priority for elected officials. These communities are not lawless zones or criminal encampments. They are survival neighborhoods created by systemic housing failure and the complete absence of affordable alternatives. Residents organize themselves as best they can within impossible circumstances, creating order from chaos. Every election cycle brings renewed pledges to finally end homelessness. City leaders announce new task forces, funding packages, and innovative pilot programs. Budgets increase on paper. Press conferences multiply with impressive announcements. Yet actual outcomes remain extremely poor. Between 2022 and 2026, Chicago spent billions of dollars on various housing and homelessness programs. Vehicle homelessness still rose sharply throughout this same period. Most funding flows to emergency response rather than permanent housing construction. Temporary shelters, increased policing, and cleanup operations consume large portions of allocated budgets without addressing root causes. Affordable housing production lags far behind actual demand. Only a small fraction of needed units are built annually. Zoning restrictions and organized community opposition slow projects for years. Voucher programs fail, primarily due to widespread landlord resistance. Many property owners refuse tenants with government assistance, citing perceived risk and administrative bureaucracy. Accountability for failed programs remains extremely limited. Comprehensive program evaluations are rare. Failed initiatives are simply rebranded with new names rather than fundamentally corrected. Residents gradually lose all trust in government. Institutions. After years of broken promises and unmet commitments, many stop seeking help entirely through official channels. The growing gap between political rhetoric and lived reality actively undermines reform efforts. Without fundamental structural change, announcements increasingly become substitutes for actual solutions. Homelessness has become a political talking point rather than a crisis requiring urgent action. Leaders campaign on compassion, but govern with enforcement. Until housing is treated as essential infrastructure rather than a market commodity, the crisis will continue to deepen regardless of promises made. If current trends continue unchecked, Chicago's RV homelessness will significantly worsen. Rising interest rates, insurance costs, and utility prices are steadily increasing housing instability across all income levels. Economic analysts project further rent growth of 6 to 9% annually over the next several years. Wages are extremely unlikely to match this pace. Eviction filings may rise again to record levels. Climate volatility will intensify existing risks. More frequent extreme cold events and severe storms will increase winter deaths and displacement. Infrastructure failures during emergencies will disproportionately harm vehicle dwellers. Parking enforcement is expected to expand further. More restricted zones and aggressive towing initiatives are already planned. This will push residents into increasingly risky and isolated areas. Healthcare systems will face dramatically higher uncompensated care costs. Emergency rooms will remain perpetually overloaded with preventable conditions. Children currently growing up in vehicles may face severe long-term educational setbacks. Seniors may be forced into institutional care prematurely due to health decline. Without major public investment in deeply affordable housing, effective prevention programs, and integrated support services, this crisis becomes permanently embedded in Chicago's social fabric. Chicago's RV homelessness is not a temporary anomaly or economic blip. It is a structural outcome of deliberate economic and policy failure over decades. What happens next depends entirely on whether housing is finally treated as essential infrastructure that everyone deserves, or continues to be treated as a privilege reserved only for those who can afford market-rate prices. This crisis isn't happening somewhere else. It's happening right now to people who used to live normal lives just like yours. If this story affected you, we want you to tell us in the comments what shocked you the most. And in the next video, we're exposing how this crisis is spreading to other cities and why millions could be next. You don't want to miss it.